Jordan Peterson is not going to back down. And I'm going to tell you the questions that he has for all of you. Just a brief recap. You see, he's being investigated because people have complained about him when Bill C-16 came in and he opposed it, and this started his notoriety. He decided that he could no longer, in good faith, act as a clinical psychologist. Yet they're still trying to strip him of his license because people have complained about his political views who didn't even interact with him, who don't even know anybody who has. So people weighing in from the outside because they're nuts can get this esteemed psychologist canceled. Jordan has supplied documentation as to why he is being investigated, including retweeting Pierre Poilievre, the leader of Canada's official opposition, the Conservative Party, criticizing Justin Trudeau, his former Chief of Staff Gerald Butts, and New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, and an Ottawa City Councillor, and objecting to the Ottawa police threatening to apprehend the children of the trucker convoy protesters. What makes you think that something similar won't happen to you or someone you know and respect or even love? Think about this. They are after Jordan. They want to silence him. It's like you get into a fight and you're 1 against 3. Who do you go after? You go after the leader. You go after the tough guy in hopes that the other two, realizing that you've taken the leader out, turn tail and run. This is part of the reason they're coming after Jordan Peterson. Because if they can silence Jordan and let him go silently into that good night, who else is going to stand up to them on an ideological basis? What if that were to happen to you and someone you care about, someone you love, if they can do this to Jordan? What makes us as a society believe that you are going to continue to be able to communicate honestly with your physicians, lawyers, and psychologists and representatives of many other regulated professions if they are terrified of their regulatory boards and can no longer tell you the truth? This is what's happening in California right now with not bill, but law passed that began on January 1st, AB 2098, which precludes a doctor from talking to a patient, for example, about COVID, except in the exact stated terms that Pfizer has induced the politicians to promote.
Brought to you by Pfizer. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Brought to you by Pfizer.
Go into wrongthink, and the guillotine will come upon you. And even if it doesn't sever your head, even if you survive the investigatory board, it's at thousands and thousands of dollars to defend yourself, and the oodles amount of time. So who's going to tell you what they believe to be the truth? And this is the whole point of freedom of speech, is to be able to settle our differences peacefully and not allow us to get steamrolled by the locomotive of the pharmaceutical industry, which of course they have done successfully to the tunes of billions of dollars in profits and rocketing stock prices. Hooray for the investors! What are your children going to be taught when all their teachers, that's a regulated profession too, of course, are so afraid of the woke mob that they swallow all the ideological lies that are now required of pedagogues, regardless if they believe what they are saying? In other words, we are going to be crammed down in ideology, aka like the Soviet Union, where you were taught one unified lesson. You are going to be taught that the state, that the elites that are running it are doing so for our own good. It's akin to North Korea, where if you were to teach anything but the fact that Kim Jong-un, whoever is in charge of North Korea at that moment, is God, you will be sent to the gulags. Nobody's going to believe it, but the children are going to swallow it whole. There will be no fight back, and the country, society will ossify with these beliefs and become very, very breakable. What makes something durable is pushback. What makes your muscles grow is when you go to the gym and you tear them a little bit, and then they grow back bigger. And this is what's supposed to happen with society, but it will ossify, and then we will be very much game for the taking over by an army that doesn't believe these ideological BS, that allows people onto the battlefield that deem themselves masculine and male and were willing to fight, rather than being inclusive and putting out sissy boys out there because you have to be inclusive of the trans community. What are we going to be if we allow criticism of the public figures charged with the privilege of our governance to be grounds for demolition of not only the critic's representation, but their very livelihood? Well, of course, you're not going to have anybody saying anything, and that's the whole point. This is what they desire. They desire to silence, once again, Jordan Peterson, to have him go silently off into that great good night so that others will learn their lesson and be under the rule of those who believe that they know humanity's fate and it is responsible for them to shut up any critics, because the critics, of course, are wrong. You know, anybody who said that COVID emanated from the laboratory was a conspiracy theorist and a liar and needed to be shut up, which is what the administrations in America have done. And they insisted, they mandated that you take the vaccine that doesn't prevent transmission. But shut up is the point. That is why they silenced you on Twitter. That is why the United States is the bastion of freedom, because we have the First Amendment, which protects our right to discuss things in a public manner. But in Canada, they don't have that. So they get to squash you. And why not squash the giant who stands in their way, which is Jordan Peterson, so that others once again learn the lesson? How far are we willing to go down this road without forthright resistance? Well, for me, my friends, obviously that resistance comes now, and I hope that I inspire you to say no more. Niet, comrade, you will not be doing this to me, and stand up against these authoritarians who wish to enslave you, to indoctrinate you into their 1984 dystopian society with the Ministry of Truth, which America tries to instigate, which obviously, if you stand against Trudeau and his siphoning off of the bank accounts, his freezing of the bank accounts of the truckers movement, who of course he deemed racist and misogynistic because, you know, he stood for Black Lives Matter, or rather he knelt, he got on his knees for Black Lives Matter because, you know, a little bit of honking and a few cars lying around, I mean, that's definitely not preferable to burning down cities and buildings and destroying businesses, which is what Black Lives Matter and Antifa did the entire summer. But we're supposed to forget that because not doing so is engaging in wrong things. So I stand with Jordan Peterson and I applaud him for sticking his neck out, and as he has done over and over against the authoritarian Trudeau and Canada's wannabe communist government. And I say that resistance comes now. And I urge everybody to support Jordan and to write a letter to the Canadian Psychologist Board, to Justin Trudeau, and to vote these horrible people out, and to stand with Pierre Poilievre in Canada. And if you're in America, to stand for your right to speak, because you know that they want to take it from us.